Michael Imperioli, welcome to Meet the Press.
Thank you for having me. It's a real honor to be here.
It is an honor to have you, and I do want to talk to you about your play, An Enemy of the People, and we are going to do that in just a moment. But I want to talk to you big picture about this experience. You are known for incredible works, everything from The Sopranos to White Lotus to Goodfellas, but this is your first time on Broadway. How exciting was it personally for you, and how exciting is it to have your Broadway debut?
I think doing a Broadway show was the last thing on my bucket list as an actor, to be honest. I mean, working with Marlon Brando was always there, but that's never going to happen. But I always wanted to do a Broadway show, and never happened. There were a couple of offers I had and possibilities, but you know, it was timing or it wasn't the right project. And this was Jeremy was attached already. Jeremy Strong, whose work I really admire, and Sam Gold, the director, who I'd worked with in the past, and I knew this play and I loved it. So this was the perfect, storm to do a Broadway show. And for me, it's like being part of this history and legacy of great theater artists who've come to Broadway for a long time. I mean, they've done this play, they started doing this play on Broadway over 100 years ago. There's been like at least a dozen Broadway productions. Being part of that lineage, when I was a kid, I went to see a few Broadway shows as a teenager that really, most of them were musicals, with my class and stuff, but just seeing, coming down to these theaters and seeing these actors perform really, I think, inspired me to want to be an actor in many ways.
Well, talk to me a little bit about that, because you are a native New Yorker. You owned a small theater for a period of time. Have you always loved the theater? Is it just intrinsic to you?
Yeah, there's some magic to it because it's all happening in the moment. And it's a combination of you, your fellow actors, the text, and the audience. All those things happening each night together. And you're different every night. Your co-workers, your co-actors are different every night. And the audience is different every night. The text is always the same. That's the foundation, right? But those other things are very, very different. Audiences can have very different energies. Some are very vocal. Some are very, cheer at different moments, yell or say things. Some are very quiet, but they're listening very intensely. So, and as actors, you come in with different moods and different energy levels and points of view of that day. And so it's live in the moment. Very different than, acting in film and television, which can be very satisfying and interesting, but there's a real, you're walking on the wire out there.
Well, when you and Jeremy Strong are on stage together, it is electric. I had the honor of seeing your play. Talk about the differences of doing live theater versus television. You say you're walking on a wire. What are those nerves like? Is it energy, excitement? What do you feel before you go out on that stage?
There's a lot of adrenaline, although I'm not so aware of it. The first couple of times we went out there in front of an audience, this play's done in the round, and it's a very different experience that I've never had, because you see audience members everywhere. And that took a little getting used to. There's a lot of adrenaline. Jeremy and I have some really great scenes together, and I just lock in with him, eyes, and really listen to him. So it's a real, my performance is going to be directly affected by his, and probably vice versa, if I don't want to speak for him, but he gives me a line in a certain way, I have to counter that in a certain way. I'm not just going to do what I did last night. It's live, so it's all about what's happening in the moment. Sometimes he'll come at me with a little more heat, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little different attitude, and the same from me. And that's the beauty of it. You know, I know you came last night, which was, there was a scene. There's a scene where I'm trying to get the guy who owns the printing press to not print this certain article. And usually I play that scene very fake casual almost. Not fake casual, cunning casual, you know? Hiding my true intention behind this ingratiating thing. And last night I tried it with a lot more suspicion and a lot more condemnation, if you will. Two very different choices and approaches for the same scene going after the same goal. And that just happened in the moment by what the other actor, Tom Ryan, was giving me.
You didn't plan that beforehand.
No,
you just came up with that emotion
happened.
in the moment.
Yeah, if you relax in the moment and, you know, if you know the work enough and you trust it and let go, things can, you know, you can have these inspirations in the moment. It's not going to take the play way different. It's all the same thing, but, you know, you have these little discoveries that you make, which is very exciting. After, I mean, I think last night was around our 56th performance or so. So it's very exciting to still have moments of discovery, you know, within that. And, you know, in the repeating it or doing it over and over again, you get more comfortable with listening, really responding. In the beginning, you have your choices that you know work, right? That you've gone over with your director and he's helped you get to this place and you know it works. And you're nervous and you want to be good, so you come out and you really hold to all those things and make sure they work. And then after a while, you can ease up a little. You know the choices are there. Well, what else is there? What else am I feeling? What is that look he gave me? Can I follow that and do something with it? You know, it's like fencing or boxing or something, you know, countering.
Well, you talk about the fact that you do this in a theater that is quite literally in the center of the audience, theater in the round. Yeah. And I was there, and I have to tell you, I felt like I was one of the townspeople of this Norwegian town. I felt like I was there. I felt like we all had a responsibility. And last night, it was incredibly passionate, heated. I was speechless at the end of it. As an actor, what is the impact on you to have the audience so close, to be a part of it in that way? And in a moment, audience members are actually sitting on stage.
Well, I find it really, really exciting to have the audience that close. Once you get a little bit comfortable with, if you're looking at your fellow actor, there's audiences behind you, because the seats go, the stage is kind of on the bottom, the seats go up around. It's almost like a little arena. Yeah. But that intimacy and that proximity just adds to the stakes, I feel, and the energy and the immediacy. And I think the audience really responds to that, you know. And you know, you really feel it at the end when sometimes audiences can be more quiet, sometimes it can be loud, but at the end they seem to have listened, and a lot of people are moved by it, you know. In the end of the play, I don't want to give anything away, but he's saying, you know, we have to imagine that someday, you know, the truth will be valued and the water will be safe and clean. And this is written a long time ago, you know, and those words make a lot of sense to everybody.
The ending of the play is haunting in some ways because it feels like Jeremy Strong is reaching into the depths of everyone's soul and saying what everyone has thought at one point or another. And yet this play was written in 1882 by Norwegian playwright Henrik Ibsen. How do you think it's still, how is it that it could have been written yesterday, and how does that impact you?
You know, it was based on something true that happened in, I'm not sure if it was Norway, might have been a different, I think it was actually in Germany where it happened. You know, these arguments where science and politics clash and meet, climate change is obviously a really easy parallel to make, right? Where a lot of scientists, or most scientists, are saying that, yes, you know, carbon emissions and fossil fuels are changing the weather. to disastrous effects, and it's just going to get worse if we don't do something. That's pretty much the consensus. But not everybody believes that. Not all politicians want to make decisions and policies that are based on that kind of science. Why? Because if that's, if most scientists are saying that, and that's really true, why are you choosing not to do it? Well, because economic interests, large oil companies that would go under or don't, or are funding politicians and lobbying politicians, and jobs that might be lost, or although jobs can be created, and where you see politicians making decisions based on economics. Now, we faced a similar thing during the pandemic. So it's like, do we shut down the economy? Do people go out of business? Our businesses closed during the pandemic, certainly did. Was that the best decision? Were there other choices to make? I mean, there were people who were saying we should try herd immunity, and some people are going to die and some people are going to live. We lived through all these things and are living through them. And I think I see that, after the show, sometimes people wait outside to say hi, and you see people saying, this play is impacting them because they're living this. They don't necessarily trust their leaders or people because they have political motivations rather than the motivations for the well-being of the citizens.
Is that part of what drew you to this play? The fact that, yes, it was written in the 1800s, but there are so many parallels to today, to our world.
Oh, yeah. It's extremely relevant. Extremely.
Why did you want to do this role?
I think it's a really important play for now, The fact that it's so old, that it's 140 years old, really means that, wow, we haven't learned our lesson. I don't want to get pretentious about things, but there's a lot of young people coming to see this play, and if one of those people, teenagers or early 20s, makes a decision to maybe go into environmental law or politics because they're, or art or journalism or something because they're inspired by what they saw that night, that's a very meaningful possibility for us. And it doesn't have to. I mean, it can just be an entertaining evening if you choose to be that, or it can just make you think. But you never know how things are going to influence people, especially young people.
There's a moment in the play where Dr. Stockman, your brother, contemplates leaving Norway, the Jeremy Strong character, and says, "In America, we won't have to worry about the willful ignorance of the masses." He is warning, yes, about the water being contaminated, but this is also a warning about the willful ignorance of the masses, isn't it?
Yeah, but I don't think that masses are being willful about their ignorance. I think they're being manipulated into ignorance, and they're being propagandized into ignorance, and they're being, frightened into ignorance. There's people in my family who receive their sources of media and news is very narrow. I'm not going to mention where or what they get, but it's extremely narrow. And a lot of what they consume media-wise is based on fear. Not really based on facts. Cherry-picked articles to really heighten the fear, right? If a migrant commits a crime in New York, the reporting becomes huge, right? When maybe, 50,000 people didn't commit a crime that day, but that one person who did it, we're going to know about it, we're going to hear about it, just so someone can point and say, see, this is bad because this happened. Cherry-picking things, and I think people are manipulated into that, and then it becomes a whole worldview. It goes from consuming these things, reading these things, and that becoming your worldview, and that determines who you're going to vote for. I mean, we only have two choices for president, right? It seems like, I guess. And people are going to make their decision about that based on not a lot of different aspects of information and policy. Mm-hmm. They're going to base it on what they're less afraid of, and a lot of people will, which is very sad in a way, you know.
What do you think the significance of that moment is, where Jeremy Strong is addressing the audience as the community members, all of us, and saying at least we won't have to deal with this in America?
When he says that line, in America we won't have to deal with this, which he really says after they've basically beat him up and vandalized his house, people applaud when they hear that line. You know, we looked at, during rehearsal, videos from January 6th. I mean, that you know, the violence that happens in our play, you know, we made a direct parallel to what happened, because there's misinformation and there's manipulation of, listen, people attacked the Capitol based on absolute lies. That was confirmed by pretty much every, you know, judge and, you know, expert and everybody. Lies and lust for power, and people were hurt and people died as a result of that.
So you watched January 6th video to prepare for what is frankly one of the toughest scenes in the entire play, which is when your brother in the play is getting physically assaulted. Why was that important to go back to January 6th?
You know, it's just something we were talking about, you know. How quickly these, you know, because it starts with words and ideas, that scene. And how quickly it turns into violence, you know.
The emotions of that scene are overwhelming from an audience perspective. What is it like for you to be there? You are the mayor, you're watching your brother.
Well, at that point in the play, we have some people who are invited on, audience members who are invited onto stage as if they're participating in this quasi-town hall meeting. And I look at people when it gets violent, and people are like, you know, you can see them get really scared because it kind of it happens so quickly. How people can turn. You know, they go there with intentions of listening and trying to find out information that goes to violence. People get really scared during that scene. They're up close. I don't think they're scared that they're going to get hurt. It's just kind of, the ugliness of it is shocking, you know.
You talk about the parallels to today, to the environment, to COVID. A lot of people compare the Jeremy Strong character to Dr. Fauci. Do you see that as a parallel as well?
Yeah, that is a parallel. I mean, when we were in the pandemic, there was a lot of, you know, some people who were saying we should get vaxxed. People didn't want to get vaxxed. They were afraid of the vaccine. Then it was like, if you don't get the vaccine, you can't do this or go to work at certain environments or go into certain places, and a lot of people were, you know, felt that their civil rights were being trampled on. I mean, I got the vaccine. I thought, you know, I think vaccines have done a lot of good in the world, but, you know, it was new, and it was, for some people, it was scary. Some people are, you know, and I understand that, you know. Pandemic was new ground for us. It was very scary. In the beginning, I got sick, you know, before the lockdown, and I had COVID right before the lockdown. It was really scary because we didn't know anything about it, and I knew a couple of people who had died, and there were different theories on how to treat it, and you know, there were a lot of politics going on.
Did you draw inspiration from real life examples for your character, the mayor who does not want to listen to his brother who's sounding this alarm about the water being contaminated out of concern that the economy of this small town could collapse?
I drew inspiration from two people who, one who was alive, one who was dead, who were not politicians, but there was something in their personality. One was actually a journalist. And I'm not imitating them or using them as my basis for character, but there was something in them. I watched a lot of their...
Can you share their names?
No, I don't want to. No, I won't. Maybe after I'm done. But I watched them over and over and over and over again, and there's little bits that I kind of stick in there. It's not, I'm not basing my performance on them, but there was something in their attitudes. But I didn't base it on politicians, just their tactics as human beings, and watching them in interview situations and public situations. There was something I found very interesting. You know, the only thing I did watch a lot of politicians, as I do, you know, in the news, and their amazing ability to not answer the questions that they're asked. You ask them a question and they talk about what they want to talk about.
I'm very familiar.
Yes, they don't answer the question. You ask about, you know, A, and they'll bring up Z, you know, because that, you know, they have their agendas, and you know this. But you know, he's a small town politician, you know, who he's really scared about the town being destroyed. It's not just his reputation that he's worried about, or even his own job, but it's like, the reality is, if we have to shut down the baths for 3 years and find the money to rebuild this system, this town may be bankrupt and people are going to lose their businesses and homeless, and, you know, that's on me. Is there another way? Because my brother is really gung-ho. We got to shut it down, rebuild at all costs, and this is very new science. Talking about bacteria, which was very new then. You know, there's a line where Jeremy's character's father-in-law is a tanner, and the tanneries he suspects are putting out some toxic byproducts into the water. And, you know, this guy's a tanner, he's an old school, you know, probably not very educated guy, and he says, well, can we feed these animals rat poison to get rid of them, you know? People didn't really understand that science, so you know, it wasn't as easy to get a whole community behind you based on such new scientific theory and fact, or fact, I guess, maybe in this case.
Well, let me ask you a little bit about our current politics. The current GOP presumptive nominee, Donald Trump, as you know, has repeatedly used the term enemy of the people. How does it feel to see that term so prevalently used in our politics today?
Who was he referring to when he said it? Like, I'm
the
curious.
Media, largely.
Oh, the media. All the media, or a certain part of the media?
Donald Trump has frequently used the term enemy of the people to talk about the media. And I guess my question for you is, how does it feel to see that direct parallel with the name of this play?
It just feels like we're doing something important, you know? I mean, obviously, whoever's against his ability to become president again, he's going to call the enemy because he wants to win, and at any cost. But it, you know, it feels like we're doing something positive, you know, both as a piece of art that's engaging and moving and inspiring and entertaining, because a lot of my friends who come, you know, kind of think, oh, it's an old play, it's going to be this quiet kind of, you know, solemn thing, but then it's just a lot of humor. Amy Herzog, who adapted it from the original, Ibsen translate, the Norwegian translation, she adapted it, and this has found a lot of humor in it, which there is in the original as well. But that it's also relevant, socially and politically. It's kind of a gift, as an actor, as an artist, to be engaged in something that's, I think, important.
How do you see the role of art, of theater, of acting in our politics, in our world today?
Well, to give people, something to think about, besides just, listen, it's very hard to disseminate information. People receive so much information these days, constantly, through social media, through television, through, news all the time. And a story like this, engaging in a story can really give, a kind of wider perspective, and maybe, make the person think for themselves about the issue, rather than just, I like this politician, I agree. I like this reporter, I agree. That I don't like this person, I don't agree. Wow, thinking about this is interesting, How do I really feel about this? And, 2 hours sitting in that environment, just in this story, can, maybe affect the brain a little bit differently, to have you settle down and think into it a little, into these issues a little more.
And the real world literally collided with this production during one of the previews of the play, when during the very brief pause in the play, climate activists stood up and started shouting. And in fact, some people in the audience thought it was a part of the play.
Yeah,
Tell us how you and your character, so you were confused even. Tell us how your character responded, which was a little different maybe than how Michael Imperioli would have responded.
Oh, very much different. Well, what happened was, there's this, the first 3 scenes of the play were in 1880s Norway. The house lights are down. The audience is looking into the window. The 4th scene of the play, the house lights are on. We're addressing the audience as if they're in this town hall with us. So we break down the 4th wall. Environmental Extinction is an activist group, climate change activists, and who care deeply about the environment and what we're going through and what the future is going to be. They had either seen the play or got a copy of the script, because they knew exactly where to interject. There's a place where the moderator of the town hall says, if there's no further objections, Dr. Stockman, you may speak. And someone stood up and said, I object. There's no theater on a dead planet. And I wasn't sure if maybe the director planted someone there, because he likes that part of the play getting a little bit chaotic. And the audience is not really sure what's going on, because the play just starts while the audience is still milling about. We invite the audience during this pause to come and have a drink on stage. There's a bar on stage. It's very confusing as to compared to the first half of the play. So some of these activists started shouting out about climate change. And, as far as I went, we were still doing the play, because there's no 4th wall at that point. So I just started calling him a liar and saying, I was using lines from the play and saying, this is all speculation. Don't listen. You don't have the floor. This is a lie. And then in the original Ibsen, the mayor, who I play, is also the chief of police. Mm-hmm. And although we don't really lean into that in this version of the play, I always knew that in rehearsal and thought about that a lot for the character. And nobody was really intervening. I said, well, I'm the chief of police. I'm going to get rid of this guy. So at that point, still thinking that he may be a plant, and part of that the director put in to throw me a curveball. But I just went out and started pushing him out of theater. I was not trying to hurt him. I was doing it very safely. But then I realized, oh, he's a real activist. And then there were some other activists who stood up in different parts of the theater. I wasn't offended. I wasn't like, how dare they interrupt my play? I think they did it in a constructive, respectful way, although if it happened in the first 3 scenes, it would have been very kind of disrespectful. And the play, they love the play. It supports their arguments. They love the production. I mean, it's a little bit preaching to the choir, but I think their point was to get a lot of attention and press, which they did.
How do you stay in character when you're in the middle of a play, you're confused about whether actual activists are a part of the play or whether they're real activists? How tough was that to stay in character, and how important?
For me, it's like, you know, it's our stage, man. You're going to come onto the stage at your own risk, you know. When you're on stage doing a play, there's a lot of adrenaline flowing. So your decisions that you're making are very split second, and I'm always making choices as the character. Now, I'm not a psychotic. If somebody, you know, was in the audience, fell and cracked their head open, I'm not going to like pretend I'm in character. I'm going to do whatever I can to help that person, right? Also, I was not going to punch this guy in the head and try to hurt him. I was just like, you know, leading him out of the theater, you know, kind of forcefully, but definitely not, you know, in a violent way. But, you know, my training was, you know, stay in character. I mean, get lost in the, you know, that world. That's where the choices come from. And when you're on stage and that adrenaline is flowing, you use that adrenaline to get further into the world and further into the character. It's not like normal sitting around. It's different.
You have been very outspoken when it comes to politics, talking about the Supreme Court, speaking out for LGBTQ rights and environmental rights as well. Why is it important for you to lend your voice to the discussion of politics as well?
Sometimes I feel very, you know, angry about certain decisions and feel sometimes, you know, powerless. So social media has given the ability for people you know, people with a following, I guess, to get their views known. And for some issues, I feel I want people to know that I'm on their side. You know, I think there's some certain issues where you're, you know, legalizing discrimination against people, which I find horrifying. You know, and I think it's important that we don't feel silenced into, you know, into not speaking up. And I think it means something to the people who know my work and like it and follow me, that I'm on their side and I'm thinking about them and saying things in their support.
It's interesting because Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, you talk about speaking out and sharing your voice. He endorsed President Biden back in 2020, but he says this time around he's not going to endorse anyone, citing the division that his endorsement caused. How do you see the role of public figures in this moment where we're in a very
The division,
tough
what division?
year?
It was completely divided before that. And now, did he cause division? I don't know. Maybe among his fans. Maybe some people feel. I have a lot of fans who are completely opposite me politically on most issues. And very often I post things and they're hurt by it and offended by it and surprised by it.
That doesn't dissuade you from posting something that you know might alienate some of your supporters, your fans?
No, it doesn't. No, not at all. You know, and people write, stick to acting all the time and stuff like that. And it's like, I don't know, why? I mean, what, you know, it's just my opinion.
You feel you have a responsibility to use your voice, to use your platform to speak out?
Yes and no. Mm-hmm. I kind of like doing it. I don't know if I have. I totally respect people who don't want to do that. I respect people who don't want to endorse because they don't want to offend some of their people. I understand that. It's a very personal, individual decision. You know, I mean, if The Rock didn't want to alienate a lot of his fan base, that's his business, you know what I mean?
What conclusion have you come to in that regard? Will you endorse a candidate or campaign?
Joe Biden.
And will you campaign with him? Will you be out?
I endorse Joe Biden.
Will you be out
yeah,
campaigning with him?
Yes, of course I do. Yeah, I endorse Joe Biden. I hope, you know, I hope he wins. I think he's done a lot of good things for the country, and I think the alternative is unacceptable.
Given what you are saying about social media, what is your relationship with social media right now? Will you continue to post things throughout the course of this election year?
I don't know.
Pull back?
You know, when I first got on social media, it was during the pandemic and during the summer, and it was an election year, and there was a lot of toxicity that I wasn't prepared for from comments, and I got really engaged and wrapped up in it, and to my own detriment, and I won't do that. I don't think the same way, give that much power. Maybe just, you know, I shut off comments because it's that I find that, you know, a lot of hate and just, you know, that's not so constructive. Although people, you know, get mad when you shut off comments, but I'll probably post things here and there. You know, I'm trying to do more things that are more constructive, instead of just like condemning the opposition. You know, trying to explain why this alternative is good. What good's going to come out of this? Because I did a lot of the opposite, a lot of, you know, there's plenty of that, you know, and trying to be a little bit more positive and constructive in communicating to people and to fans, and in the little things that I can do constructively, like, you know, host like a meditation class with people online, which I find constructive, and actually doing something that could be positive rather than just railing about, you know, what's wrong with everything. There's plenty of people who do that, and that's fine too, if you do that.
There's a long list of things that you already do, which is, in addition to acting, you are the lead singer, you're a guitarist for an indie rock group. You've written a novel, as I said, you had previously owned a small theater. How do you have time to do it all?
Well, I only have time to do the play right now, because it's very demanding and it's 8 shows a week, but I'm really good at budgeting time, and, you know, there's periods when I'll do one thing and stick to it, and then there's some times when I can do several things at once, but, you know, I don't, kind of like art and life and work is not separate kind of thing, compartmentalized. I collaborate a lot with people who, like with my wife, and I collaborate with people who I'm really close to, and it's not like it's separate, you know, and I don't really have hobbies, so it's, you know, work is part of life that way.
Well, and speaking of collaboration, you have this speakeasy with your wife in Chelsea called Dante.
Oh, the old one was in Chelsea. So the speakeasy is called Scarlet, and that's on the Upper West Side.
And I mean, how important is it for you to have these community spaces?
Well, Scarlet is a cocktail lounge on the Upper West Side, on Amsterdam Avenue, and the thing that I most love about it is that we have live music on Mondays, so we get to employ mostly jazz musicians. Monday we had a great night, and a lot of musicians came and sat in, and it was beautiful. And you know, giving people work, also giving, you know, the people who work in the bar, you know, the staff, who bartenders and, you know, servers and managers and, you know, jobs, which is cool. And but to have jazz musicians come and play and other musicians come to see them and sit in, that's very gratifying.
Well, and to this point, I mean, how important is it to have a community space? Why is it important to you and your wife to have this community space? We're talking about all of the divisions right now, and here you have a place where people come together and listen to music.
People come together, and I think it gives people a sense of community and a sense of, you know, at the end of everything, I think ultimately people are fundamentally good. When you get past the layers of division and politics and like propaganda and, you know, I think ultimately people are good, and if you can bring people together in positive environments where they share similar things, likes, and appreciates, you know, music, be it, or a nice environment to have a drink in or a snack, good things come out of that, and people feel a sense of meaning.
Where does your optimism come from, and to what extent is it informed by your religious views? You write about becoming a Buddhist in 2008.
I don't really see Buddhism as a religion, to be honest, because it's not theistic. Buddha wasn't a god. It's not worshipped as a god. Buddha was a man who kind of attained what we think is maybe the highest way of being for a human, right? And what he found, what is that? That attainment, a big part of that is compassion. You know, and Buddhist point of view says we all have that enlightened nature already in us. It's just obscured by karmic layers that have built up in our lives, and you know, and if you can kind of work with the mind, Buddhism is really about working with the mind. That's all it is. It's not really it's not really dictating social structures or things like that. It's really about working with your mind in a way to kind of touch your essential nature, with Buddha said is, you know, very compassionate.
How much does that inform how you see the world, and again, the optimism that you express?
I find optimism in young people. I find young people today are a lot more open-minded than the youth that I, you know, of my, you know, generation. I saw it in my kids. My kids are all adults, but I even saw that when they were teenagers and when they were preteens and stuff, a lot more open-minded, a lot more informed, a lot more engaged, I think. I haven't seen this much social, you know, activism and engagement since like the 60s. You see now. I find that to be optimistic.
As you work on this play, and as you think about this election cycle, you're optimistic, and yet, as you have said, January 6th helped you all prepare for one of the key scenes in this play. How concerned are you that there could be a repeat, or that this election cycle could become violent?
You know, listen, there's violence every day in our world, right? You know, and from a Buddhist point of view, you know, aggression has to really be overcome in ourselves first before we can do it anywhere else. And that's going to continue no matter who becomes president, you know. There's always going to be people who are open-minded, who are intelligent, who are compassionate, who are going to speak out. And, you know, I think democracy is going to outlive whoever becomes president.
We are almost out of time, so just very quickly, this play ends in June.
Mm-hmm.
Have you thought about what comes next?
Well, you know, I'm working on adapting this book that I wrote into a movie, so I hope to have some time to finish it. I'm writing it with someone named Francine Volpe, and we have a first draft, so I want to finish that and make it into a movie.
Can you tell us which book?
It's called The Perfume Burned His Eyes. It's a book that I wrote 7 years ago.
And finally, I have to ask, you play the mayor in this play. Do you have any political aspirations of your own?
No, I don't think I'd be very good at that.
We'll never see a Mayor Imperioli?
I don't think you.
Congressman Imperioli?
There's much better people for that than me. No, no, I think I'd get really frustrated by all the protocol, you know. I like to get things done my way, you know what I mean? It's like, you know, find something, there's a project, this is how we do it. And I think getting bogged down in protocol and the way things have to, you know, the channels things have to go through, I think that would drive me insane.
Just finally, Michael, what do you hope people take away from your play?
I hope people take away the importance of thinking for yourself, you know, and really, you know, and listening to different sides of an argument. I think we really don't want to listen to anyone else's sides to an argument. We don't want to see other people's points of view. We don't have to agree. You don't have to vote their point of view in. We can oppose it, but sometimes it's good to get to the bottom of why someone's thinking a certain way.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Anything I missed? Anything else you want to say?
I think that was wonderful.
Thank you. That
you.
was such an incredible conversation. Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.